Hello, Mixer. Sorry, my stream deck was messing up with me there. I couldn't get you right on time. Uh, Anyways, doing St. Patty's a couple days early here. I cured this on stream more than a week ago, week and a half ago, a week ago. So it's been chilling in here. I've been turning it up inside down every once in a while and making sure both our brine and meat are well saturated and coated and mixed together. But it's time to get into cooking this, and so I'm going to start by cutting up little bit of root veggie. I'm gonna use this other sweet onion tonight. I'm gonna use most of it here with the cabbage, but I'm gonna use a little bit of it here with the beef. This is a rather small piece of beef compared to usual. Usually, people are doing a huge whole brisket, So, we're still going to take our time to do this, but I'm only doing it for myself, really. So, I've only got about a pound here, but you can do the same basic procedure whether you got small amount or a large amount with this. Why aren't you peeling for me tonight? Why don't onions ever peel on stream? I give up. Got my compost down here if you're new to the scene. Or rather, my kitchen compost, which later goes to my worm compost outside, which later goes to flowers and other stuff that are non-edible. Because I throw meat and all sorts of stuff there, and by the time I finish it up there with the worms and probably what all else insects are living in there, it looks nothing like what it does when going in there, but I'm still not going to trust it 100% for growing something like my garden I just planted yesterday. So, let's see. I'm going to slice most of this with the cabbage. Let's do that like that with this. Some larger slices here. And put these at the bottom of the pan here. Gonna do some carrot and some celery too, so not really a full mirepoix, but enough to keep the beef off of the bottom. More concerned about getting rid of the greens here than I am about the base, so I'm just going to take the tops off on that. This is all going to be stewing for better part of 2.5 hours here, 3 hours. So, well, 2 hours because we got a smaller piece. But like I said, either way, you can do it 2 3 hours. It's more of how you feel with the meat being cooked through. So, it doesn't really matter how large it is. Give you an idea what I got going on there with the pan. We're going to take this, I'm going to discard the brine. It's done its job. And just remove the meat and actually give the meat a wash down. I'm not too worried about going heavy on it on the wash down. I'm more just trying to get any of the bulk spices that have been sitting on it for 2 weeks off there. And I'm not that worried about washing it off because I didn't use pink salt or curing salt or saltpeter or whatever you may. Stick that down in there. It's going to shrink up a little bit. I think that's going to shrink up to be just about perfect for that pan. And I'm going to, then just water. Water. About 1 inch to 2 inches above the meat when you're filling it with water. Sorry, I don't have a cam over the sink, but you'll see when I return to the stove here in a moment. And the meat, if you're noticing there, the fat started detaching from that meat. That fat cap there was almost completely detached when I bought the meat. So, unfortunately, that's the piece that I have, not necessarily a condition I caused. And so, a fair amount of salt into that fresh water. Cracked pepper. And MSG. Turn this on to come up to a boil. And we'll turn our attention towards making cabbage. We're going to bring this up to a boil and then we're going to take it down. It's almost like we're cooking stock again. Or we're braising again. Except we're boiling with water instead of stock, or we're completely submerged. So we're bringing it up to a boil, then lowering it down to a temp just below a boil, like 190-ish. It's almost, and then we're going to leave it there for about 2 hours, especially because I have a smaller piece of meat. But if you have a larger one, you're doing a whole brisket, something like that, definitely, 2.5, 3, maybe 3.5 hours, depending on how big of a piece of meat you got going. That's really the only difference here in the recipe. I cut my brine in half. You may want to do a full brine, and you may want to cook it a little bit longer, but same difference. So let's give this a rinse out since we had meat in it, even though it was in a bag. I'm going to use this for making my, for holding my cabbage. I'm gonna use the large pot, I think. Sorry if that was loud on the headphones. So I'm going to start sauteing the rest of this sweet onion. Normally I just use the yellow onion, but I have the sweet onion here, so we're using it up. I'm using it up. Using it up. Hey, Miss Stocks. How are you this evening? Getting dull. Or is dull. Doing well. Got my corned beef going, or starting on the stove there. I've got some onions started here for doing my cabbage. I'm going to do purple cabbage, and I'm not going to do the traditional like boiled cabbage. That's a little too much for me. But I'm going to do red cabbage with onions and apples, or tart apples. I've got some Granny Smiths. They were refrigerated, so they're not the greatest quality, but we'll live with it. And these guys, I'm going to boil these guys off and then toss them with a whole bunch of butter and herbs. So, boiled potatoes, corned beef, cabbage and apples. 2 days early, but keeping my schedule. Why aren't you boiling? Gonna switch over to Good. Support your local small businesses right now. They need it. Especially if it was a family pizzeria. We have just about all the fine dining in New York closed. And we have cases where I didn't want to talk about this tonight, but we'll talk about it. We got a restaurateur in Washington. It's closed 12 of his 13 restaurants, and the last one's a bakery. To be honestly, the hourly people, I mean, if this ends up being less than 8 weeks, which I really don't think it will be, but they're going to luck out the most, because they'll have 8 weeks of state pay for being laid off. The small business owners, I don't know how many of them can afford this. I'm here and hunkered down, and I got stuff for at least the next week and a half, whether I'm doing shows or not. And I probably got another month or two on top of that, but not the stuff that it's like surviving on ramen. But I'm set to stay here somewhat indefinitely. Of course, we haven't had shortages or much of that around here. I mean, California was sort of one of the first ones to sort of actually be worried about it, and so that initial rush, I think, was you know, they're trying to knock down the wave of infections, but I think California in itself, the rush was knocked down because it happened a little bit earlier here. But now I think it's in full blow here, and I think probably 3, 4, 5 days here you'll be seeing the worst of California. We just saw the first community-driven infection today. That was reported. Yeah, definitely feeling sorry for those small businesses. And I mean, I've spent the last 5 years working at a farmer's markets dealing with basically all of the other small guys in the county. And yeah, we've been hurting already because of the forest fires, but I think this is going to be a major blow to the restaurant industry and the entire nation after this blows over, because it's all going to be delivery. I mean, it was the wave of delivery before this. We've now got DoorDash and Uber Eats and all these other ones that have been making a huge push. I think we're going to see this whole deal is going to make those ghost kitchens things that I've been annoyed about much more of a reality. Oh, Sonoma's had 2 or 3 already. We had a couple of people that were on cruises come back to Sonoma and come back to the hospital, like come back to Sonoma, but come back directly to the hospital here in Sonoma. But we just had our first case that was not from a direct meeting, not from having been there somewhere. It was somehow, they don't have a direct source for this person. It was somehow derived from the community. And so it is live in Sonoma. Fair amount of salt here. We're going to turn this down and work on cutting apples. Where did I put the apples? Down here. Okay. But yeah, I mean, we'll really know here in like a week in New York, because New York's looking right now I think it's third worst, and not for long. Yeah, I don't know if I ever want to go on a cruise after this. How many people had... I mean, just the horror stories even before this with cruises of people dealing with I mean, I'm sure they can be wonderful. I mean, they're like floating casinos. But... they're also floating petri dishes. I mean that both... in the sense that I think countries are, not necessarily the U.S., but countries are using them as test beds to figure out what they're dealing with. And those people were quarantined for 2 weeks in Japan and then quarantined another 2 weeks in the U.S. Nice, nice. Yeah, I'm very happy with how my garden went. It lucked out with a number of things. I had been waiting because the weather was showing it was supposed to go down to about 36 at night here a couple of times. And while that's certainly not freezing, with sprouts I didn't know if I wanted to trust it. And then I look at my weather yesterday and those 36s have changed to 41s, and it was going to rain this morning. And so, awesome, get them all in the ground. Give them a quick spritz so that they're happy right then, and then give it a good rain right after. And so, all worked right in good order. Still annoyed F1's canceled. I can understand why though. Well, not can't. Well, might as well be canceled. This was a sort of half season to begin with brand new regulations next year. I broke my peel. Well, we basically don't get rain here other than winter. We basically have sunny, moderate, anywhere from 60s to high 80s, like 9 months out of the year. And then for 3 months in winter we get a bunch of rain and gloomy. We don't get heavy rain. We don't really get that many thunderstorms. They do closer to the coast than I am. But we'll get just days of rain, sort of like Seattle thing type rain. Oh, quiet down, onions. I don't want you to burn. Yep, that and Michigan and certain parts of Arizona. Saw a thing about a missing cow in Florida that's too fast for the cops to catch. Been on the run for a couple months now. Only laughing because I think it's true. The one thing that I can't deal with, and I'm sure you get a lot of in Florida, I get it just about everywhere but here, is humidity. I just, ugh. I grew up with high humidity summers, and not as hot as Florida summers, but high humidity. What about Florida? I thought I heard or thought I had read a news article about a cow that's been running from the cops now for a couple of months. From Florida. The cops can't catch it because it's running too quick for them. So we're adding the Granny Smith apple here to our onions that have been simmering for a bit. Turn that back up to a light saute temp, and we'll grab our cabbage. There is going to be about a 30-40 minute pause here in dinner tonight while I may just let the stream go with the camera on the stove. Once I get the cabbage all stewing here and get the potatoes going on the stove, there's going to be 30-40 minutes there where we're just going to be hanging out. So just a warning on that, but otherwise sort of an action-packed evening. we get them there's a lot of cow territory in Sonoma. It's not just all grapes, and there's a fair number of pastures out by the ocean side, and so we'll get stories of cows stuck along the ocean and. I think I might only need to use half of this guy for this. I don't want to do a ton of it. I mean, I'm only feeding myself. Wow, that's a nice densely packed head. Yep. It's also why we have a thing here in Sonoma called Sonoma Aroma Days. It's because a fair number of the pastures around here aren't meat cows, they're dairy cows. And so there's days that they just spray manure and it's everywhere as far as the smell. I think this is probably a half a head for myself here. It's probably going to be enough cabbage for this. Alright, so we'll turn this back to the stove. Perhaps, I'm not really adding any mustard, but yeah, we got some onions and some apples in there. And I'm using purple cabbage. But certainly not the... I'm sorry, I understand the history of it, but I'm not going to do boiled cabbage. I'm gonna set my limits at sort of boiling my beef. It's not the worst thing. It's just I'm not interested in. I mean, who needs to learn how to do boiled cabbage? Throw it in a pan with some water and boil it. Yeah, just not my thing. This will be used up later. I have plans for braised greens coming up, and we'll use cabbage. I have some spinach in there that I'm going to be using for the cook-along on the 20th. And, which, that should be fun, considering I doubt anyone bought anything for that by now. And cancel my cook-along because I'm going to drop a couple of cubes of stock into this too. I'm going to go chicken. I have both pork and chicken. Oh, sorry, this is the mic that's on. You can probably hear me plenty well right now. Yeah, I mean, and you're just basically adding the onion and I'm just adding the onion and apple there to basically, give the cabbage something to eat. But as I was saying later, I'm going to be doing cook-along. We'll be using a little spinach for stuffing the chicken with that. And so I have some spinach in the fridge. I have some cabbage in the fridge. And I have some other green kicking around here. So going to definitely do braised greens coming up. Going to be doing fried deviled eggs on Wednesday. Just something fun to try. I'm just going to try and fry the egg whites. I mean, I'll already cook them, but then fry the hard-boiled egg whites. And then do the deviled eggs with those and do pork with that. That sounds good. I thought about doing shepherd's pie, but I've sort of done shepherd's pie before, and I just did the cottage pie with the duck confit. So let's see what we got going here. That isn't quite to a boil yet. This is my smallest burner in back, though. That thing's the little engine that could. What's the next big holiday to plan for coming up here? What? Cinco de Mayo? Is there something in April that I'm not thinking of? Ooh, flying. So, got a Zinfandel tonight. Another Lodi, Old Vines, and there seems to be a number of blends coming out of Lodi. Like there must be a number of decent Old Vine Zinfandel vineyards out there, but not really notable ones. Easter, yes, Easter. That's probably more one for you than for me, though. Maybe I'll cook rabbit. Custom fake cork. Looks like a cork, but it's fake. Some sort of synthetic material. Even though it's got nice little cuts to make it look like wood grain in there, it's still like foam or something. I actually had someone come in and ask me about doing that. It was when I was talking about doing duck, so they were like trying to pull out weird things that I might not be willing to do. I'm like, I've done duck before. I like duck. I've done rabbit before. I like rabbit. Don't have a problem with that. I'm not a big game person, but I'm not afraid of it either. A lot of deep fruit on the smell of that. Not a lot of smoke or wood. Sort of tasty though. Let's see here. Let's look on the calendar here when Easter is, and Sunday, April 12th. So it's a Sunday. So I will be streaming that day. Yeah, I'm just gonna straight up add it right now. I'm doing rabbit on Easter 12th, or on Easter April 12th. There you go, it's on the calendar. And see how far down this is reduced already from being up there at the practically overflowing to having a good inch or so here from the top. It's yummy. That's jammy. This is a sort of light for his Zinfandel. I put this almost more in cat territory. It definitely doesn't have that much of a spice to it, but it does have, I mean, it's jammy, it's berry, it's deep dark fruits. This is a $14, $15 bottle. Not too shabby. I do have this going to a boil back here, so I'm going to start turning that down a little bit. Want it sort of like a stock at a lazy bubble or slightly below a boil. Let's get these taters going too. I don't have anything good for... I'm running out of pans here. Too many things to boil at once. That guy's got a hole in him now. Alright. Guess we're using this big guy. By the way, if you don't like me already on Facebook, or on, not Facebook, but Twitter, I did just put out a cool little animated GIF collage of all the dinners that I've done recently, and threw that up on my Twitter stream. I spent the better part of the morning working on that. Which is sort of sad considering how simple of a animation it is. Howdy Trigger, how you doing this evening? Ooh. Don't want that. I'm doing quite lovely. Actually sort of half coming up to a pause here. I've been enjoying this lovely wine and chatting with Mrs. Tox. Cutting up potatoes here for boiled red skin potatoes. Doing my St. Patty's dinner here 2 days early. I've got on the stove back there behind me, I've got the corned beef that I did on stream better part of a week ago, if not longer. I forget exactly when that was. And so we're boiling that with a couple root veggies in there. I've got a pan going with cabbage, apples, and onion. Not exactly your traditional boiled cabbage, but it'll taste better. Sorry, Irish people. And doing some potatoes here, which I'm going to boil until they're nice and soft and creamy like, and then toss them with a whole bunch of butter and herbs. But we're going to have 30-40 minutes here while these all just simmer away here to just chat and hang out. Trigger, I'm not sure where I found how I caught on to you. Maybe it was through one of the PUBG streamers or something like that. But Mrs. Toggs is another food streamer here on Mixer, so you can catch her doing food stuff too. She's a little bit more family orientated than me. I like to drink and have a bit more complicated food. Hopefully no offense is taken from that statement, none intended. Seven. Not sure on 7. Don't recall. Probably Rhino. I hang out in his chat quite a bit. He's one of the streams that I often have open on second window. We're going to reduce this down into a nice, lovely, jammy-like consistency. So it's going to get really nice and dark. It's looking sort of half-cooked right now. That's why I'm saying that. And, okay, you can see the potatoes on there still. Let's go to stove main, just cut out the cutting board for the moment. Another one for the cork collection. I've got I can't show it to you easily. I got something plugged in attached on top of it, but I have looks like an old paint can, and it's got the traditional paint can bottom and top to it, but it's got clear plastic instead of a tin side to it. And I'm slowly, every time I get a new cork that I haven't had before, and a cork, I keep adding them to this. So I have a collection of corks that I've had. Yeah, I've got 101 projects I want Rhino to make me, but I don't think I can really afford to have him do them all. I want so much custom cookware. I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna comb my hair real quick. I'm back. Have a good one, Mr. Stocks. Yeah, a number of my plates and flatware and all that's on the last legs. My purple plates that I got in college they're cool and sort of different. I still sort of like them, but they're cut up and chipped. Wasn't he gonna try and make a didgeridoo? Is he still gonna try and do that with clay? Yeah, that's cutesy. I might pick up one of his random scrap vases when they go through. One of the ones that make it to Etsy that aren't predestined for something. I had to get rid of my flowers before the stream today. I typically buy flowers once a week. I typically buy them on Wednesdays. At least from like March till November, December. But I don't have a good container. It used to be a great hookup because the lady that was giving me the flowers used to hand them to me in a coffee tin, and we had this, I'd bring her the coffee tin back at the end of the week and get a new one with a new coffee tin. And I don't think she's going to continue that, and I don't want to push her to. So I think I should get a vase. Cups, I'm probably not gonna pick up a cup either. And I've got a gazillion mugs. I mean, everyone does mugs. So, probably not gonna do those. I've got mugs that I don't even, I've got mugs that I don't even use. Like this guy. Oh, you couldn't see that. Like this guy. I really only use this guy. This is my daily driver. It's made by a custom artist, local artist, who family wife team that unfortunately passed away from cancer a couple years ago. But there's an ant on there. I've got ants crawling. There's a light circuit here that they like to try and come in through. They ain't got anything to be interested in, though. They're just looking for stuff. But that's my daily driver cup, and then I've got 4 or 5 other ones from them that are more solid color, ones that are up here. Oh, you can't see those on stream either, but like that one there. This one's sort of cool with the coloring and what. I mean, you just glance at it, it's brown, but you look at it and there's some blues and there's some orange in there. And then I got a like lemon yellow one from them too. And I've got, I mean, this is my old business. You can't see that there, but my old business. No longer in operation because it was no longer an profitable business for one person at the farmers markets with all of California's taxes, licenses, fees. I mean, for a one-person business, I was paying upwards of $2,000 a year just to the state. That's without taxes on whatever I wasn't generating enough to really earn taxes off of that. That's just for existing. Uh-oh. Getting too hot here. Add some water and let that keep going. Actually, no, it was way more than $2,000. What am I talking about? Health license on a mobile food facility is $1,700, and it's going up year by year, like 10-15%. An LLC in California is $800 a year, so that right there, that's $2,400. National California Ag Department charges each stall at a farmer's market, that's a certified farmer's market, $2 per market. So a department of the California government, the Ag Department, which had absolutely no jurisdiction over my food production business, was charging me upwards of $800 a year, $400 markets in a year. I own a mobile food trailer or kitchen, and what I was doing was going to farmers markets for the last, it's been 2 years now, but was going to farmers markets throughout Sonoma County, and I was buying products directly from the farmers at the markets and making value-added products or basic prepped items. I was doing stock, I was doing salads. After a while, I started doing hot foods on location at the markets, and after a while, I started doing coffee as well. Just all methods to try and make more money. And I mean, that doesn't even include once I get into it, That doesn't include your business licenses for your county. That doesn't include your business licenses for each of the cities you're doing farmers markets at. It's actually, now that I do the calculation in my head, it's more like closer to $4,000 just for existing. And for a long time there, I tried to make it work with employees too. And so I had anywhere from 1 to 3 employees. And so then you start adding in insurance, employee fees, Social Security or welfare, which you pay in on their paycheck, but as a business, you also pay a separate cut yourself for your yearly taxes. It really is. I mean, just to run a little trailer at the farmers markets, I was doing it because it was something that I enjoyed doing. I thought I could make a couple bucks doing it. Really didn't think I was going to be rich or famous trying to do it. Was more trying to support the concept of small farmers markets and family farms and small family farms. But yeah. I enjoy life. Was saying earlier, it's this whole shutdown. We're gonna have so many restaurants shut down here because of scares and fears, and justified, but regardless, and they're not going to open back up. Some of them will, but with the push that we have had with restaurants hurting so bad, with so much delivery, so much takeout, so much of that, kiss the majority of your mom and pop restaurants goodbye. Gonna add a couple more chicken stock ice cubes here. Don't fall on the floor. Please don't fall on the floor. Please don't fall on the floor. I bought chicken and it's trying to fall out of the freezer. My freezer was stock. Awesome. Nice, nice. Yeah, it's good that they're doing all of this, and I agree that it should be done, but it's being handled poorly here in the U.S. It was initially poorly handled in China, but China already had systems in place. So once they bumbled it off at the start, they had setups. Like they have hospitals with set up separate entrances that people can be immediately screened, and you don't go home to your family after you walk in the hospital. You're there and you're tested and you're figured out whether you have the disease or not, and you stay there until they figure it out. They just announced earlier today that it is roaming freely in Sonoma County. We've had one previous suspected case that was community generated, but that was later traced back. We just had our second one that is now believed to be community derived. And so unless I got it going out to the store today, I am set for at least a week and a half. If things are really bad, I won't be able to do the things that I have planned for streams, but I'm still be okay. I'll be okay for a long time if I don't need. I've got ramen, and I've got a freezer full of stock. And cut our potatoes down, turn them off, and just let them sit there and hang out in the hot water until everything else is ready. My freezer used to have a lot more meat in it than it does now. Unfortunately, it's also because of California. What I did have up until about a month and a half, 2 months ago, actually beginning of the year, was I basically had a, if you're familiar with the CSA, I basically had a meat CSA. There's literally a meat producer like 20-minute drive from me right here in Sonoma County. And so I would pay them a regular subscription fee, and I would pick up a bag of meat every 2 weeks. And it would be, I mean, they had certain things in there, like I was getting a couple of pork chops a week, and I'd get a pack of ground meat of some form every week, and I get a pack of bones every week. But they had some flexibility in what they were giving me too. And so it worked out well. Unfortunately, the last slaughterhouse in Northern California has now, actually there might be one really far north, but at least Northern Bay Area, California, has gone entirely, they've closed off their doors to small producers. And so just here in the last couple of months, we've gotten a lot of farms going up for sale. We've got a lot of stuff going here in Sonoma, not just because of the wildfires, but a lot of small ranchers have been pushed out, because if you're raising livestock in Sonoma County, you're looking at 500 plus mile drives with your livestock in order to have them legally slaughtered. And so even though I would be buying from a farm less than 20 minutes away from me, it had to travel 500 miles in order to be legally slaughtered. Thank you. Still didn't stay open. And it closed. It fell. So yeah, that's sort of like the situation here in Northern California. Not a lot of people very happy with Marin Sun Farms right now, because they were the last guys, and I understand that they, as a sort of guy in the middle, had to make the jump towards the larger guys rather than the smaller guys in order to survive themselves. But yeah, you want to talk freedom of speech and freedom of press. I may even get in trouble for this. Don't talk about it with the slaughterhouse. How many pictures you see online about slaughterhouses? probably easier to see something like Faces of Death than an actual slaughterhouse picture online. You see, I have one bot telling the other bot what to do. Yeah, I don't have any first-hand experience with much of it, but I would also wouldn't be afraid of it because I would like the experience because of, I mean, I understand what I'm eating when I'm eating it, regardless of the fact that I haven't slaughtered him. But yeah, I think there's too much of a disconnect in reality, and maybe it's a good thing for psychology. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a psychology master. I don't know what's greatest for the general public, but I wouldn't necessarily go that far. But yeah, I think people should definitely know what they're eating meat, and I don't. At this point, I really don't. I try not to as much as possible, and I don't in any way really try to support large commercial operations because so many of them are improperly run. I try to, with my meats, I try to buy small farms, small operations. I know even with meat, you're dealing with large operations, but in the scheme of meat, small operations. Non-CAFO meat. It's actually sort of an odd thing for me to be doing beef. I don't do a lot of beef. I do a lot more lamb, chicken, pigs. The dairy I use primarily is from, I do some from Clover, but primarily from Strauss, which Strauss, if you're unfamiliar, was the first organic dairy in the United States. They have methane digesters on their farm that produce energy for the farm. And they're also a certified zero waste operation. Yeah, and that's also a part of the disconnect because we've got actually properly raised meat trying to compete with beef being raised on grain that's being subsidized by the government to be cheaper. And so it's not a fair fight to even begin with. And that said, I do believe in some forms of grain-fed beef. I do believe the primary form, I don't think the majority of meat should be grain finished. I think a vast majority of it should be pasture finished. But I see a market for grain finished for like high-end market or fine dining. Well, that's also a government thing, where the vast majority of beef is raised on pasture. It's raised on greens. It's raised on grass. It's what cows are supposed to eat. It's what their guts are designed to eat. It's just, again, our government dictates rules on the slaughter of beef, which I'm not against regulation on how it should be done properly, but it's been made so restrictive that then all of this pasture-raised beef is then sent to very consolidated, very small number of actual slaughterhouses where they then have to live for the last 6 weeks or so of their life before they're slaughtered. And so they're going to feed them the cheapest stuff that they can get. And that's going to be grain. And so that's the situation we have. While the vast majority of beef we have is probably sustainably raised the majority of its life, it's that last 10 seconds of its life that's really ruining everything. So that's pretty much done here. I'm going to turn that down on low. Let that just chill and rust. We're basically waiting on our beef here, which we got another 30-40 minutes to wait on, unfortunately. I should get out. I'm going to get a bowl just to make sure I'm ready with everything. And bring some butter to room temp. And this will be for with our potatoes. I am using clover, but that's, for me, it's more of where I grabbed it from than which one I use. Clover is another interesting operation where they have, they're a larger operation than Strauss. And they have, it's sort of two operations at once. They have a very large conventional dairy production, and then they have a smaller organic production. But they have a wider variety of products than Strauss. They have cottage cheese and sour cream and things like that. I bounce between the two of them. But yeah, the government needs to change how it's doing its regulation on beef industry. We're stuck in the old mobster days where you have a different slaughterer, you have a different producer, you have a different retailer. It's like the same way with alcohol, where you have a producer and you have a retailer, and there's a legal separation between them. And they were, like I said, there were laws to counteract the mobsters back in the days. They just need to be changed. Gonna add, actually probably should have added this a little bit earlier, but we're gonna add a splash of organic apple cider vin. The reason I say I should have done this earlier is vinegar. When you cook vinegar down for a very long time, you'll get umami flavors out of it. So the longer you cook your vinegars, the more savory type flavors like that you'll get out of them. And I'm going to add a bit of balsamic to it too. Cheap balsamic, but balsamic. And that's actually, balsamic in that is actually one of those crucial steps. It's going to take that from being apple onion jam with bitter cabbage to just being all jammy and ugh. Really enjoying this Zinfandel. Which is unusual for me because Got a little bit of leather to it, little bit of funk to it, but not much. And you don't have much of the spices. This is almost, as I was saying earlier, this is almost like drinking a Cab Sav. It doesn't quite have all those peppery notes. It's like a jam bomb, but it's a Zinfandel. Oops, didn't mean to do that. To be honest, I've forgotten way more than I know about wine. I took some in-depth courses and some in-depth knowledge when I went to the Culinary Institute in college, but that was well over a decade ago. Even though I live here in Sonoma, basically because I'm living here in Sonoma, I'm trying to expand my knowledge. But I'm expanding my knowledge through cheap supermarket $10 wines. With the exception of one vineyard that I keep going back to. But yeah, I would say that I have a decent wine knowledge, basic knowledge, but I'm not someone to. I'm just trying wines and saying what I think and giving people my opinion on them. I wouldn't consider myself a wine critic. I sort of made it sort of part of my plan here with the web show to do one or two nights with some sort of matching wine. And I do love how wine matches with food. And I do love there are some combinations of food and wine that are, I mean, magical. There's really like the combination is just no other way to describe it. They completely change each other and make both of them much better. It's really rare though. So it's sort of, for me, it's sort of the search, that occasional matchup that is just ridiculously awesome. But other than that, I tend to stick to Zinfandels, or at least with California wine, which much cheaper for me since it's right where I'm living. But internationally, much more spicy, much more rustic wines, maybe like Southern Italian wines. I like that barnyard, that leather, that smoke. I like that barrel spice. I want to know that I'm drinking something. I'm not so much, even though I'm really enjoying this as a berry bomb. I'm not a Pinot Noir, even though I have one chilling right there. Light, fruity, bubbly, Beaujolais. There's a time and place for them, but that's not my standard go-to. And I drink a fair amount of sparkling too, but that's also because I like California sparkling and I like Iron Horse, which is, as I mentioned before, right here in Sebastopol, and beautiful winery that I keep going back to and keep buying from. However, at this point, after talking wine this much, I should point out that it is against mixer rules or regulations or whatever to be sponsored by an age-restricted product, and so I'm not sponsored by anyone, but I'm certainly not sponsored by any of the wines I'm trying on stream. See how our potatoes are looking here. They should be cooked through. Oh yeah, those are good. They may not be like, yeah, those are good. Different names of grapes. Pinot Noir, Zinfandel, Cabernet Sauvignon. They're nothing but different names of grapes. What you have with wine, unlike, say, beer, beer is starting to get there, but unlike beer or unlike spirits, is, well, some spirits, but wine, their main selling point is where it comes from. And so you have such a buildup of different countries coming up with different regulations of, France, Appellation de Contrôle, or AOC, or Spanish, you have a different version of it. US, you have a different version of it. So they all have laws and regulations that have changed them. And so it's really, there's a huge learning curve to the beginnings of wine. But it's really just learning the terminology. It's not that it's really complicated at all. But I try and do some. I haven't done it recently, but I try and do some mixed drinks. Most recent I can think of is I did a margarita night when I did enchiladas. But I really should do a couple of those. And at the spurning of in that same stream, Mrs. Toggs got me to commit to doing rabbit on Easter, so that's coming up. Gonna be doing a cook along on the 20th, but I don't think anyone's gonna be able to buy anything for it. So I'll be doing my first cook along solo, probably, and which I do I'm planning on doing a cook along like once a month, where, I'm a one-man show, I live alone, I do everything myself, so planning and doing is extra step. So I'm planning on doing once a month. I'll put out a set planned menu / ingredient list, and people can tune in and copy me, see who does the best, compare them. I don't know, Instagram or Discord. I don't really have a Discord going. Cabbage is looking decent here. Our apples have basically melted away to nothing. You can't really tell the onions in there anymore. It's smelling quite lovely too. Really just waiting here on our beef to keep cooking. Potatoes I may actually have to strain because they're probably going to be too warm for too long if I don't. Got to keep hydrated even when you're drinking. Smelling your water is also good too. But that's the other thing with wine too, is so much of the flavor is the aroma. It's the last of my bottle, by the way. And so much of it is just the smell of it, and almost makes it easier to drink longer that way, because you're smelling it all the time. Don't need wine in my bottle, my bowl. But other than mixed drinks, I've been sort of working my way through cheap bourbons. I've got a little bit of Four Roses hanging out in here. I've got the small batch Four Roses, not the single barrel or the really really cheap one, sort of the mid range one. And I've got a cheap bottle of Buffalo Trace, and I've got one or two shots left of Woodford Reserve Rye. Like in all of those, I've sort of come back to Buffalo Trace as sort of a really cheap bourbon that I like as a base. I liked it better than the Four Roses. I really like Woodford Reserve, but Woodford Reserve is $10-20 more a bottle. So I think I'm actually going to dip out at this point. I'm going to let that beef simmer for another 30 minutes here. Or at least 20 minutes here. So I'll be back, let's say 25 minutes from now. Cut the difference. No worries, Trigger. I figure most people are second or third tabbing me. I'm not expecting people to be 100% engaged in my streams. But I've got stuff chilling here. It's just going to be simmering away. I'm going to give it another 25 minutes here. And so I'll come back at that point and join you guys then. Do hope you join me back here in 25 minutes, because we'll plate things up, make everything pretty, give you a good look at what I got going here for corned beef, and the finish up on the potatoes with all the butter and goodness. So I'll be back in, like I said, 25 minutes. slow. Got our now room temp butter here. Gonna throw this in the bowl. Give our hands a wash since it's been a little bit. It still probably wasn't 20 seconds. It's amazing how long 20 seconds is when you actually concentrate on it. So let's look at got our jammy cabbage and apples and onion, a little balsamic and apple cider vinegar going on there. It's looking like our beef is doing all right. Our fat cap from that is now floating. And we got our potatoes. Gonna strain our potatoes next. Just strain them into this guy in the sink. Give me one moment. I think it's replaying in my background. Yeah, sorry about that. That was my cube computer in the back, my living room. Got that. Need to cut up our herbs. Some thyme, some chives. I think I might grab a sprig of rosemary here too. I stocked up on so much stuff. None of it's really going to go bad. I mean, I bought all the stuff I'm going to need for the next week and a half here of streams, basically. These chives are getting on their last legs. Don't know why my Stream Deck has such an issue switching mics around. I'm probably gonna have to change that setup. Well, I still haven't figured out my whole sound setup. I mean, I still want to have the two mics set up where I'm able to let you guys listen in on sizzling of the pans and all that good stuff. But also want the front mic that can hear me. As it is now, I've got two mics. I've got one here in the front and one in the back, and in order to prevent echoing, I sort of switch between the two of them. But I constantly forget which one I have active. Should point out this rosemary is rather tender. I wouldn't do this with if you've got some really woody rosemary. If you get really woody rosemary, it really doesn't. You don't want to add it into a dish really. You can use it as a garnish. You can use it as like an infusion. You can put it in like a stock or something like that. But it's not something you really want to end up on the plate with. Whereas softer, finer rosemary, while still very pungent, can make its way there. This we're all just tossing with our potatoes, so making sure we don't have any like woody stems like that one there with the thyme. But the softer stuff I'm not too worried with the thyme. Especially since I'll probably pick away at it on the plate. I'm cooking for myself, so This is... Unfortunately, I don't typically buy salted butter when... Salted butter is sort of a weird concept, because the good butters from, like, France and Europe, that the cultured ones that are done with a lot of time and practice, they're good as far as salted butters go. But in the U.S., salted butter is something you typically avoid. And so... Well, butter is sort of a tricky thing because, I mean, better butters typically mean heavier, fattier butters. And so it tends to mess up a lot of recipes that are relying on, you know, typical American ratios for butter. If you want to get into nicer, fancier butters, it's really more something you should be doing in smaller purchases and doing with, like, bread and other things that you already know the flavor of, so you have a baseline, so you know what you're tasting and you can figure out what you like. Exactly, bread and sandwiches. By the way, I'm making careful to not make sure and not spread a bunch of soap on my potatoes in the sink right now. But, I mean, there's some really good ones out there. There's a great, I don't know how well distributed it is. I know it's throughout California, at least. Goat butter in a silver label that, I mean, it's expensive. It's, you know, like the price of butter for for half a pound rather than a pound. But anyways, going back to what I was saying about salted butter, I unfortunately bought salted butter here, but it's American salted butter. So I am going to add more salt in here because it's potatoes. They need a crap ton of salt. But I'm not going to add as much as I would if I had not bought salted butter. So we got salt, we got pepper, we got MSG. Let's see. I think we'll leave the spice drawer alone. Take our still warm potatoes there and drop them in that butter. And give them a cover. corned beef out here, which, as I said before, I did not use a curing salt or a pink salt, and so we're not going to have as rosy red of a color as your typical roast beef, or your typical corned beef, sorry. Smells great. But if you do this using pink salt, which I've done that before for curing meats before, and it's just expensive and hard to find and not something that I'm really overwhelmed by. There's a lot of people that have questions over its health benefits or negativity, more about its negativity. So, not being a commercial setup here, I'm going to skip that. Okay. I'm just going to give up on slicing that last piece in half. Going to take this fatty part here, or the fat cap, dice it up real nice and small. I'm going to actually toss that in with the cabbage, onions, apple, and balsamic mixture. Just give another layer of umami flavor in there, and a little bit more fat to enrich and everything. And actually turn our heat off on our liquid back there, but that's going to be done as far as that is concerned. And I want to, but I don't think I can pull off a purple plate tonight. Let's go with the bigger guy. My poor plates. I need to find a better setup for those. I don't use them a ton though. So we'll start with our potatoes. I like my potatoes, so I'm going to do a little bit heavy on those. Looks a little overdone, but actually started making me wish that I had done the pink salt, because it would have been much more pink. But otherwise, it's nice and glossy. It looks like it's juicy, so happy with wine tonight. Although I don't know, some people may be unhappy with that because it doesn't have quite as much barrel spice as most Zinfandels I'm used to. Oops, where's my knife? There we go. 2.5 minutes of contortion, and I really need to, I mean, if I ever set up a kitchen to do this properly, definitely need a proper setup for taking pictures. Because I've already gotten into way so many rules for myself here to figure out how things are and how they work for like Instagram and Twitter. And anyways, like to thank you guys all for joining me. I'm gonna enjoy this off stream. Hope you enjoyed joining me. I will be back on Wednesday. Wednesday I'm going to be doing, I've got a pork chop in the freezer. Going to be doing, I forget what all else I said I was going to, I think, forget all else I said I was going to be doing with the pork chop. But going to be doing deviled eggs, and I'm going to be trying to, just first time, never done it before, going to try frying the egg whites. just to see what it's like. I've got some panko breadcrumbs to do that. So fry the egg whites and then pipe our yolks back into them should be interesting. And then I'm going to do dinner on top of that. And the 20th, again, I have the cook along, though. Wondering if people are going to actually be able to buy the ingredients for that. But the ingredients list is down in the doobly-doo down below in the information on my page. Thank you all for joining me. I am going to put you on my thank you for joining me page, but I will be looking and seeing if there's anyone to host. If there is, I'll be hosting someone. If not, I hope you all have a lovely evening. Thank you and so much.
That's sweet. Woo. Yeah, those got some sugar.